Dexter New Blood, the miniseries, which is unofficially the ninth season of Dexter, and also, in the words of the producers, a proper ending to the show, had its finale this week. And I have to say, in regards to the quality of the latter seasons of Dexter, I found it to be average, which is weird because it's from the guy who made the first four good seasons of the show.
Yep. Yep.
They did a good job of wrapping this stuff up on paper, like the way the sun and all the puzzle pieces kind of worked into place. But the moment to moment character logic, and the reason I wanted to cover this first is because it's kind of forgettable. The one thing to me is that, like, okay, and this is a spoiler alert for Dexter New Blood, which is a show about a serial killer who settles in Iron Lake, New York, up in the fictional town, Cold Town. And he's basically a serial killer who's dormant. And it's kind of like a macabre type show, a bit serious, but a bit tongue in cheek. And basically, the idea of Dexter, I guess, weirdly, the new blood being his son who arrives, who he had in the third season of Dexter. So it's not really new blood. And him going after an old serial killer, the same as he did in season four, is old. The idea of his son returning, in the episode title, Sins of the Father, returning and killing him, being the one to kill him, makes sense poetically, thematically, however you want to do it. But it basically gets to that because Dexter, as usual, makes a baffling last minute decision to kill an innocent guy to escape out of a jail cell. And then he's like, I had to do it. And it's like 40 years of like, I don't know how long Dexter, the character, has been doing this, but let's say 8 seasons of the show of him being like meticulous and careful. And then just for the purpose of the plot, they'll have him do something just incredibly sloppy. Yes, it lined up like, yes, his girlfriend was going to come back with the evidence to put him away. Yes, he had to do this or bargain something. But to me, I don't understand why the show was so resistant, as much as it loves his character, as much as it loves Dexter. And you can tell that they absolutely love it, to put him through his paces or have him have consequences for his actions. Them not doing a show where he's him, I don't know, and I'll bring you in here, Rob. Him being arrested was the most interesting part of the whole series, and him going and talking his way through that kind of thing. I just kind of found it ended. It was fine on the quality of whatever. Like Ghostbusters, totally forgettable, but far cry from the show at its best, wouldn't you say?
Yes. So some disagreements with what you said. One, this was a shit show, in my opinion. Coming from someone who read the books. It was actually my wife that turned me on to the books. I read the first 3 books, and the third book was so bad that I did not want to continue with the rest
And
of the
this
series.
tries that.
Not a bit differently. In the third book, I think it's like Modoc or something. He gives the dark passenger a name, and it passes from person to person as like a spirit that inhabits you. It's terrible.
Oh, I didn't read that far into the third one. That's why.
But this TV show, unfortunately, like the last, I'd say 4 seasons of Dexter, turns into the show 24, where Dexter can do no wrong. Dexter is the best. Dexter is super great. Dexter is super awesome. Never challenge Dexter. It is effectively what it turns into. It falls apart under the weight of itself. It doesn't know whether it wants to take itself seriously. So it takes itself seriously in some parts and jokes in the other parts, but it can never be straight about any of them. It fails its own logic. It baffled. So much of this show baffled me to the point
what
where
about at the end when the son escapes, but he doesn't need to? There's nothing connecting him to the crimes, and you said a scene earlier. It's like,
and
all my
that's what I
friends
mean,
are
though.
here.
It's all fan. This show should have just been called Fan Service the Show, because that's all it fucking is. Now and I'll go through them as I bring them up, but as I commonly do, in a show where someone was involved in a field that has a scientific background, usually they're going to rely on some elements of logic. Sometimes not. Most of the time they are. I will argue that the first 4 seasons of Dexter were fantastic in that it was sometimes Dexter was a bit of a superhero, but the majority of the time, very believable, fun. It had a fun pace. It had a goofy pace. It was, and not goofy as in
It
like
had
fucking,
goals.
yeah, it just felt like, wow, there's an end game here. This show was just for me, just a slog of failure. You know, it was really the only way to put it. So, and let me describe now that Phil is back from, you know, getting bored enough that he had to go for a walk. I want to describe some of the plot decisions made by certain people and effectively plot holes of this show. So, starting from episode 1. Matt Caldwell's a character that Dexter murders that starts off this whole idiot show. Matt Caldwell's drug crazy, jealous friend says he secretly hates Matt because Matt stole his girlfriend, says that Matt is responsible for a boat crash that killed 5 people. At the end of the episode, Matt kills the white deer that Dexter has been infatuated with for we don't know how long. Dexter then snaps, takes Matt to his kill room, and kills him. So Dexter breaks his 10-year hiatus on the word of a jealous junkie, high on God knows what, and a white deer. So you're like, okay. Right out of the gate, you're like, I thought it would have been maybe somebody threatened his son, somebody threatened his girlfriend, somebody threatened him, somebody threatened to expose him. No, it's a deer that he decides to kill for. So you're like, okay. Dexter then
I like deer.
Dexter then decides, and of course, like Will said, he's in buttfuck nowhere where it's constantly snowing, it's always freezing, it's depth of winter. Dexter buries Matt's dismembered body underneath his fire pit. How did Dexter dig under his fire pit in solid ground to bury Matt's body, and the entire ground around is totally undisturbed?
Well, didn't he put it underneath who did he put underneath the lake? Partially. And I'm like, well, as soon as you do that, like as soon as it thaws, and then he somehow gets it back and then bury it. Yeah. Because
I remember he put Matt under the fire pit and then he has to dig Matt up and put him in the silo.
Okay, yeah.
Did no one notice Dexter purchasing a ludicrous amount of plastic in this small town for his kill room?
Yeah, it's
and again, these are nitpicking, but in a show that wants to be logical, you can't do the Rise of Skywalker and just say, you know what? No, don't follow logic except when it's convenient. This isn't the Bible.
Don't deer hunters have kill rooms too?
I'll be back.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, deer hunters, we all know, buy plastic. You know, buy several.
They don't want to mess up their basement.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, unless they're killing it in a not in the basement, but in a butchery in an ice house where they normally would kill that stuff. In episode 2, of course, in episode 1, we see the return of Harrison. And I will say the kid that's playing Harrison, I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head. He is doing the best with what he has. So I've seen a lot of people bashing the kid that plays Harrison. There's only one person in the show that deserves, well, technically 2 people in the show that really deserve to get bashed for their poor performances. But the kid playing Harrison is not one of them. The kid's doing the best with what he has. But in season 8 of the original Dexter series, Dexter gave his kid to a serial killer, a woman who was a serial killer who he fell in love with after his wife died, blah, blah, blah. So Dexter gives his kid to a serial killer and literally leaves. He's like, here, have my kid. Bye. And I'm like, I have a hard time believing he gives a shit about Harrison at all. You can't abandon your kid and then they return 10 years later. You're like, oh yeah, well, I guess I like you now. I guess I want to be your dad.
Yeah, it's to me, it's interesting because Dexter, unlike any show, and if you watch, there's one episode that Michael C. Hall directed in the worst season, which is the 8th season. This is probably like the second worst. Well, no, 6 was pretty bad with Colin Hanks and stuff. But even in that episode, the show feels never too far away from being good. Is the thing that kept me watching. Like, I'm like, oh, because in Killing, and I was thinking about this as a plot device, the stakes are always very clear and there's always a procedure to it, like covering it up and stuff. So to me, it was always like the idea to the very end of like, is he gonna get away with it? Is he gonna have his son? To me, number one, the thing that triggers him to start killing again in the first place made me think, oh, so it's about serial killer as an addiction, and it will follow that. And it kind of follows that in the first episode and drops it. And then the idea of like the to me in the third book, what I remember from the plot is him trying to teach his stepkids Aster and Cody the code. And to me, I always felt even the show knew that that was a ridiculous idea, but was the next nearest thing for Dexter to go to. And even then, does it seem like a bit of an afterthought of like,
I'd say the
this show
majority of
where-
this fucking show is an afterthought, in all honesty.
Yeah.
That's how it
with the
feels.
whole attitude of the show being like, don't get caught. And then it, instead of rising to the occasion, has characters where I was thinking like, okay, like the would-be school shooting, any basic blood analysis would tell you like that this person slashed at this person this way. Like even as an amateur fan of the
Blood
show,
spatter analyst,
I'd
yeah.
be able to tell. And then it's like, oh, well, Dexter's the only one who can tell. He's the only one who knows what really happened. And it's like, oh, really? Like, so, oh, it's a small town, he's
get into
bonehead,
that.
okay, but
I'll get into that in a bit, but yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'll reach that when I get there. Episode 3, it's pretty clear that the white balaclava killer is Clancy Brown. There's such a sad attempt
oh,
to
I have
pretend
sorry, I
that it's
have a
the
que-
rich. Sorry, go ahead.
the other billionaire who shows up in like the first episode,
rich
you
mayor,
think he's going to
yep.
be a prominent character, and
Yep.
they flip flop of like, oh, it's going to be this guy or this guy. They're both rich white billionaires, and it's going to have a commentary about rich white billionaires. And it's like, no,
Yeah, that guy's
Clancy
just
Brown
squeezed.
is the bad guy, and the other guy is never seen again, and has
And that's
no
what it is. They're like,
connection to
it
the
could be
story.
Clancy Brown, it could be the white mayor. Well, you know it's not the white mayor because he just leaves. I think in episode 4 he's gone. He never shows up again. So you're like, okay. And then he shows up for a phone call in like episode 8, and that's it. You're like, okay, I guess that's not the killer then. It's clearly Clancy Brown. Also, this is where the show starts. I'll discuss that in a second. So just for Phil who didn't watch the show, this guy Matt is murdered in the forest, or at least they think killed in the forest. They don't know what happened to Matt. They're trying to track it down. A member of the Indian local Indian reserve, I believe he's like a forest ranger for the local Indian reserve, says that they've set up cameras all over the forest. So this is supposed to, it doesn't, it's supposed to say, oh shit, there's cameras all over the forest. I hope Dexter doesn't get found.
Trap
Right?
cams?
Yeah.
What's that?
But they're infrared, right?
Trap cameras.
They're infrared cameras, yeah, to be able to track where the animals are going.
Okay.
Now, what does Dexter do once he learns this information? He says, shit, he realizes they're bringing in dogs, like sniffer dogs, to be able to find out where Matt is. Dexter proceeds to dig up the remains of Matt, take off his clothes in full garb, no disguise or anything, take Matt's shirt and go over to the area in the forest where he killed him, shake the shirt and rub it into the snow where Matt's blood is, and then go through the forest, rubbing it on trees and stuff like that to try to confuse the dogs, all while knowing that there are cameras out there recording everything. But this, of course, where do you think it goes? It goes absolutely nowhere. Nobody goes back to look at the footage. Nobody decides that, hey, what if the person who killed Matt, what if Matt comes back? Nothing. Nope, it's just forgotten about.
Was there any point did Dexter show that he was smart enough to avoid the cameras at any point?
Nope, not at all. He in fact goes to the very places where the camera is directly pointing that they've already shown from the previous show.
Nobody's smart on the show except Dexter, and this is what
And
bothers me.
And this is, and I'll just say now, this is a Dexter narrative, a part of the show that has to exist for the Dexter narrative to exist. Everyone must be blind, devoid of intuition, absolutely trusting of everything they are told, regardless if that person is a stranger or a well-known person to them, be unable to process basic information delivered to them, and be completely unknowledgeable of the basic functions of their job that they've selected to do in order for Dexter to succeed. And this will be proven throughout the entire show. People cannot know the basic fundamentals of their own jobs or of just basic common sense in order for Dexter. Because if they didn't, it all falls apart. Right.
My what I want to ask you, Rob, is because a lot of people would think it's season 4. I don't. I think it's probably season 2. I even like the containedness of season 1. Which one's the best season? Because
For
I'd
me
say
personally,
2.
I agree. I agree 4 because John Lithgow is spectacular as the
But what
trainer.
about and I always think of this. I love it, and it's seen as hilarious, and it's pulled off better there. The scene where he's at the crime scene as like Kyle Butler, right when the police are being raided, and he hides in the coffin, which to me is like hilarious and genius. But
Yep.
you would think he's immediately under suspicion. Like that is something that they would not forget when they pull up the garage
And
door
shit
and
like
he's
that,
there before them.
for me, shit like that is this is, and it's like even like the stuff, all the stuff with Dokes. This is borderline goofy, and this is the exact correct tone for this show. It's gotta have a little bit of goofiness to it. It's gotta have a little bit of that Raimi nuttiness to it. You know what I mean? Because if it takes itself too seriously, it's going to turn into the fucking Wire with a serial killer. You know what I mean? They've got to maintain this.
But the show started out pretty like it started out pretty serious. It's kind of like the X-Files where it started out pretty serious and then started to get more goofy.
I think it had a little bit of tongue in cheek, even right from the start, and not tongue in cheek as in funny, but as in you know, like we all saw the trailer for the he's like smiling for his thing and he's got blood splattered all over the side of him. It's and even some of the characters in the show is his little Chinese buddy whose name I always forget. All these characters
Masuka.
Masuka are silly characters. And then as evidence in this season, they don't know where to go. They don't have any fun characters except for Podcast Lady, who is absolutely terrible. That woman
was her name
I looked it up.
I called her Podcast. Yeah, through the whole movie. I just called her, or through the whole show. I believe her name is Michelle, but through the entire show,
I just called her. Her name is Molly Harper or something
Molly,
like that.
That's
it's Molly.
Yeah, sorry, Molly.
I think it's Molly something. And it's
I just called her Podcast because she has there's no her character is exposition and hey, I wanna help solve crimes.
How about
and
she
Angela
dies
Sheriff
of
goes,
Molly
okay.
Park? That's her name, Molly Park.
Okay.
Number one, I'm surprised because I've seen that actress, like she's like a character actress in other things. She appears here and there. She's always likable. The show kind of has always had a bit of a, I wouldn't say disdain, but it's like that David Fincher-esque for female characters of like they're in the way of the boys' fun kind of thing rather than being actual
I
realized
think that
characters.
happened because of one actress's choice that they, for some reason, keep on bringing this terrible actress back. This terrible actress, terrible character. And I'll get into that in a minute. Sorry,
Dexter, you don't like Deb.
Oh, passionately hate Deb. She is possibly the worst character I've seen in the series in the past 20 years. How was Dexter's fire pit not destroyed when he digs up Matt's fucking body? So he's dug into it to put Matt down there, and then he goes back into it again to dig Matt up, and it is still not destroyed. It still looks pristine.
I don't have a fire pit. I don't know.
Where is Dexter keeping Matt's clothes? Why do the dogs not smell Matt's clothes? Because scents stay where you keep things. Hence, Dexter going through the forest trying to fucking parade Matt's shirt around everywhere. Dexter, and this is the one this is where I knew that, and this was episode 3. So I was getting annoyed, and episode 3 is where I knew that, okay, I'm going to hate every part of this show, unfortunately. Dexter disposes of Matt in an unattended fire silo that anyone apparently in the town has access to at any time of the fucking day. Now, Kingston is a smaller town than Toronto. It's certainly not as small as the town that's in Dexter, but we don't have a fucking fire silo that is constantly 24 hours a day burning, that's unattended, that you can just drag things to. This idea is too ludicrous even for this story. It's absolute shit. How do we get rid of Matt? I don't know. A big fire silo.
He's not close to a river. Like you could argue that the river, I don't know, because it had the current, probably because it took place in Florida. This is one of those things where it's like the show could have done a bit more, been less lazy with its choices and adaptation. I have one question for you, Rob. I'm not sure if you'll answer it here or later, but what's interesting to me is I was reading the ratings for this show, and Dexter has always, even at the worst season, continued to grow in ratings, probably because it's on cable. And then this version even had higher ratings than the last season of Dexter, because Dexter has grown in popularity. And I just kind of find it amazing that you have such an enduring character.
I think
That
it's
people
because
like it.
I think it's because it's the Jack Bauer syndrome. Dexter good, Dexter kill people. You know, like I'm a dumb fat slob. I'll just shove popcorn in my mouth. Dexter kill people. Dexter have table that he stab. That's it. They don't want any complexity to a character. They don't want any thinking. They don't want to have to think themselves. Dexter kill people. I eat popcorn. Dexter go mad. That's it. That's why Dexter, that's why Jack Bauer, that's why the Marvel movies continue to succeed, because they're simple for simple people. And I say that not because I'm a huge fan of Dexter. And when I say simple, I mean I don't need to think. You put this up to something like Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad or The Wire or The Sopranos or The Deuce. You have to think when you watch those shows. You don't have to think when you watch this show, and that's usually what turns me off shows, when I don't need to think anymore.
Lastly, would you think that it was a bit? Because I remember, I mean, granted, I was younger. It was like what, 10 years ago that it ended or something, or it ended in around 2000. Like it started around 2002, and I remember it was like this, The Office, Arrested Development, like all of these shows were coming out, and thinking how great TV was, and thinking like this was like, for entertainment wise, it was like top tier at a
Oh,
time of like, oh,
absolutely.
this is the
It was
greatest.
so much fun. And
Why do you
that's
think is it really just like laziness? They like, I don't know why the show isn't better than it is.
for
Are they
me,
just, were they
and
never good to begin with
no, I
and they
think
got lucky?
they were great to begin with. The problem with this show is I don't see anybody enjoying themselves making it. I think, and if there could be one person that's enjoying himself, it looks like Clancy Brown. But Michael C. Hall, every single fucking scene looks like he doesn't want to be there. He looks like he's
Yeah, it was kind of,
strained to be there.
it's like a disappointing to himself that it's like, this was him saying, I understand, I'll be Dexter for the rest of my life.
Yep. And it was a good paycheck. I need a boat, so
I asked
again.
my wife what she liked about it, because she likes it. She thought it was a great season. She says there's a new dynamic, there's a slow burn, and it's meticulous.
No,
That was her point.
I did like
I agree
that
with all of, or disagree with all of those.
How dare you?
Again, I do like how, again, the ideas of like, because it's colder, the slower burn, I was accepting that he wasn't killing somebody each episode. But even then, like, the idea of it is there. I didn't find that I just kind of find it odd that if they're tired and bored of the character, why don't they
why not get a different
attack
fucking
it or
character?
interrogate it? Like, having a season of Dexter in prison would be so badass. It's such a cool idea of like, oh, now his code is put to the test, or him on trial and having to answer for his crimes. And
not to mention the code is thrown out the window in this series.
Yes.
And that to me is the biggest cardinal sin of this show, is that it is not the same Dexter. If you want to, maybe the idea of Dexter New Blood is because he's a different fucking guy, but I think the idea is supposed to be Harrison. But all right, I'm going to really quickly go through all these because I did want to mention all these. Episode 4. Dexter's girlfriend's failure at work is only outdone by the Miami Homicide Department's failure at work. But this is the Dexter narrative. Everybody must be blind, devoid of intuition, trusting of everyone, unable to process basic information delivered to them, and completely unknowledgeable of the basic functions of their job for Dexter to succeed. The arrival of Harrison has resulted in one death and one near-school shooting in this sleepy mountain town, the latter of which Harrison is directly involved in, yet no suspicion of Harrison in any capacity. The forest has CCTV cameras in it. The school does not. Makes perfect sense. For no discernible reason, here is Podcaster, with the lamest name of a podcast I think I've ever heard, Mary Fucking Kill. Or Mary Fucking Podcast? I think Mary Fucking Kill. This is the second most embarrassing character of this series, and there are a lot of embarrassing characters in this series. The only one she is outdone by, who continues her reign as possibly the most annoying and petulant character of any show in the past 20 years, is Deborah Morgan. Sheriff Angela is going to let Podcaster help her solve crimes now, because why not? Episode 5. Dexter decides to let the dealer who almost killed Harrison by causing him to OD, he decides to kill him. That does not fit the code. He isn't a killer since nobody died, and he didn't escape justice since he has previously been arrested before. Dexter pisses away the code by making his feelings towards the person painfully obvious. When Dexter can't kill the dealer, he decides to kill the guy who makes the pills. Dexter is not even following or barely even attributing his own code to anything anymore. This is clearly not the same Dexter as the previous show, and it was at this point that I realized that this is a soulless, money-driven reboot. Angela and Podcaster go to New York to track down Matt Caldwell because he shot a deer, or they think he may not be alive, so they want to prove he isn't alive. Is not being alive a crime that's punishable now? What are they doing when they're in New York? Episode 6.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, there was, I feel that it was like their skill is overlapped of like, Clancy Brown said, oh, Matt's in New York, or something.
Right,
And then he talked to him.
I mean, and I get
But they
it.
were attending a cop convention, which is just a plot device. I mean,
To
I
get them
was
there.
kind of fine with that. The thing that my one criticism of the podcaster character, aside from her Molly Park dying off screen, is the fact that Dexter saves her life and she's incredibly suspicious of it rather than grateful, which for all the shows bending towards Dexter, I thought that was very bizarre of like, wow, this
Not to
person saved me
mention-
from definitely being murdered.
Not to mention you have to, she's a super smart girl. She's been on her own. She reads about murder. She knows everything. I'm going to go with a killer into his basement. Like, it's like these
I believe
characters
that,
don't
though.
have basic fucking functions of understanding.
I believe that for like how the
Not at
character is seen, that she's like essentially like, you're gonna hate me for this, Rob, but she's like Tintin, where she's like story before anything else, before my life, before anything. It's like I just, the idea is too tantalizing to her. I thought that was annoying, and she's supposed to be an annoying character anyway. So
She was. So luckily, at least she delivered well on that. But all right, episode 6. Angela discovers that Dexter lied about his past and his whole life before meeting her, and he worked in homicide in Miami. And a bunch of death and crimes are happening and have happened around her town and within the time that he has been there. Yet there is, of course, no suspicion of him at all. He says, death make me sad, I leave. Harrison, he make me sad too, I leave him too. I sad, I come here, I better now. And then she totally accepts that as perfect logic. Angela crawls into a cave, exploring it for the first time ever, apparently, even though there was apparently a huge crime scene set up for this originally when the girl disappeared, and finds her dead friend. She calls Dexter, who, as we just discovered, totally lied to her about his past, saying that his past in homicide was a nightmare that he needed to escape or he would lose his mind. And she immediately asks him, hey, can you come down here and begin doing the very job that you previously said would make you lose your mind and you would have to kill yourself over, to which he promptly agrees. Harrison is a little Dexter. This is supposed to make you gasp. I'm pretty sure we all saw this coming with the introduction of Harrison's character. Why is the discovery of Harrison being little Dexter treated as shocking? Is it because the premise that both of them were born in blood, which then I realized as I was writing that we are all born in blood because we grow inside of our mothers. So, but that's a whole other story. Cause their brains to short circuit and make them kill, even though it's scientific. And I know this is a nitpick and people are going to bitch at me, but even though it's scientifically proven that you do not create memories until you are minimum 2 years old, and most of the time you have forgotten those memories by the time you're 7 years old. Harrison was younger than 2 years old when his mother was murdered. So how did Harrison remember anything? And this is called plot device. That's why I mean this should be called Plot Device, the TV show. Episode 7. Angela in Podcast tried to blame Kurt for her friend's death, which goes nowhere. Some guy delivers a letter to Dexter, which is a titanium bolt from Matt's leg, which goes nowhere. This entire
how about
episode,
the fact that he like gives it back or something, or doesn't hold up?
Nobody ever says this is from
evidence.
Matt. They're just like, hey, this is a bolt. It goes in the leg. Is it from Matt? I don't know, but it's a bolt.
I was thinking that the serial number would be registered to it or
You would
something. They don't
fucking-
even say that.
Wouldn't that be a great thing for the show to follow up on? Oh, it's a serial. Oh my God, the serial number belonged to Matt. How is it in Dexter's? No, fuck that. We don't need that. This entire episode is an exercise in running on fumes to get to the ending. You know it ends with Dexter versus Kurt, or even more pathetic, Dexter and Harrison versus Kurt. And let's just say for the record right now that that's the lamest goddamn thing ever in the history of this show.
Stay
That's
away
worse than
from
the
him.
lumberjack
And then
ending of the original
he
series.
doesn't respond. The fact when he's getting the text, and then I'm like, oh, and I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Harrison killed Kurt? That'd be interesting.
Yep.
And then you think it's gonna happen, and then it's like, no, he just gets out a gun. He's like, I'm sorry. And it's like, what? Like he doesn't match his MO at all.
It was the end of this episode that I was like, I'm almost ready to not watch the rest of this show anymore. Harrison somehow has the switchblade that Trinity used to kill his mom. The volume of questions involved in how he got this are too long to even mention. All that he needed to ever say was, I know this was the type of switchblade used to kill my mom, or not switchblade, what do they call it? Fly knife, or shaving knife, to kill my mom. Butterfly knife, that's what it's called. So I got the exact one. That's it. Instead, they try to go with the ideology that he somehow has that fucking knife, which makes zero fucking sense. And then episode 8, Dexter is clearly a superhero. He is bound and gagged in the back of a truck. He manages to loosen his ties somehow, strangle the driver, fly out of the truck unharmed when it smashes into a pole, break his ties easily after falling out. He gets shot. He hobbles away bleeding on the fucking snow from his pursuer, who has a long-range rifle and scope. Dexter then somehow gains the upper hand on this guy and forces a confession out of him that Kurt is going to kill him and his kid. This is what Dexter will use to put Kurt on the table, which makes absolutely no sense, because if Dexter was following his code, the code dictates that since Kurt is a killer who has evaded the law, he must die on the table. This begs a question, same as before. Does the code matter at all? Does Dexter just kill because he has a son now, or because he wants to? This is so far removed from the original show that it may as well be the Harrison show, which I have a sneaking suspicion is what the next season of this show is going to be. And then only a couple of other quick notes. Kurt, an expert shot with a long-range rifle that has a scope, somehow gets outsmarted by Dexter and Harrison, who run away from him on their legs to safety, even though he has a gun. Dexter says to his kid, yeah, I kill people. His kid then hugs him. Is he happy he isn't alone and wanting to kill people? Is he glad it's his dad? Would it matter if it was Kurt or his dad? And I feel like no one cares about anything in this show. And then on episode 9, I didn't record any notes about episode 10. Episode 9, Dexter and Harrison easily get into Kurt's trophy room, which has eluded local police forces for 25 years. What a huge fucking surprise. These women who have been killed over the past 25 years are in perfect shape, living in Barbie boxes. This place does not smell. These bodies are not decomposing. They stand up perfectly on their own, and they have perfect hair and makeup. Again,
I was thinking that they were like taxidermy kind of deal.
Taxidermy will still fall apart, right?
Huh?
Like they will still.
I don't know. I don't do taxidermy.
And also when you look, I mean, and if you wanted to go that route, sure. But they would not look like they had just had all their makeup done and been put in a box. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If they were not to this extent, but they were kind of leather faced in there, that I would be 100% on board for, because he tried to stretch their skin over a mannequin. That would be fucking cool. But no, instead they're just those women just put under pretty lights. Dexter and Harrison kill Kurt, which I was like, oh, finally we're at the end, and then I forgot that there was one more episode. Kurt posthumously is making Angela doubtful of Dexter, but who cares? Because that's going to end up in either her death, Harrison taking the blame, or more likely nothing happening, because Dexter will outsmart everyone in this double-digit IQ town. And those are the end of my notes. I did not like this show at all because it relies on everyone being stupid so Dexter can succeed. And I'm like, that's like, imagine Moriarty was a complete and utter moron, and Sherlock Holmes could just go, well, I know the answer. Moriarty's stupid. He never would have seen this. Like, no, it's the outwitting of another person. It was the outwitting of Dokes. It was the outwitting of the Trinity Killer. That's what made those seasons enjoyable. It was the outwitting of his own brother. You know what I mean? That's what made the show enjoyable. This is just terrible.
The last thing I wanted to say, because I wanted to ask Phil this, because Phil, how much of the show did you watch? Like none of it, or your wife did? Yeah,
Just
none
my
of it.
wife. I didn't care for it.
Yeah,
I watched what 3 or 4 episodes, sorry,
yeah.
seasons, and then I was done with it.
Because I found that this had the same No Time to Die problem where it knows that this should be the curtain call for its character, and he gets shot in the heart and like dies, but it feels like such a last minute decision. And I also wondered of like, I found that Harrison, the actor, he was at least well cast and he was okay. Like
Yep.
I've never seen him on anything else, and that's
Yeah, that's what
fine.
I
He's pretty
brought up when you
annoying.
were away. He does the best with what he can. He's not a bad
Yeah,
actor. He does the best with
yeah.
what's given to him.
Do you feel that there was like essentially more of a show that they were afraid to commit to around him? Because he seems to have like his own life going, and kind of like the question of will he go on? It just really bothered me that it was like they could have done a lot more with the Harrison character, but he shows up, he just basically becomes an antagonist to Dexter. I will say it was satisfying to see his son shoot him, but the fact that it was just completely on Dexter's terms and
Yep.
stuff was bothersome to me.
It
Um,
bothered me that they didn't want to take any real risks with any of these characters. That
what's
was
the
the bummer
deal
side
with
of it.
him killing because I thought he was just going to knock the guy out, but it's enough to kill him. I was kind of like, yeah, he puts him in a sleeper hold, but it's like in sleeper hold can kill you, but
It's
the show
completely
has never done
episodic.
that.
There's no overarching like, oh, I'm going to kill this guy, and that's it's just what I feel like doing immediately right now. It's whatever the writer felt like writing right at that moment, and then it's not going to matter in the next scene because people aren't going to remember what happened before it. Like
And
it's just so it
as
pisses
a
on the
final
idea of a
kill,
narrative.
like as Dexter's final kill, it's like it's so poorly thought out. Like
Yep.
not good.
Very,
Like I don't
very fucking lazy show.
me and my dad, this was the first season that my dad watched because we loved it as kids, and then it's on, and then we're watching it this week. My dad, loves the vigilante idea, but it's like Dexter was too far in the back for him to watch, but he was on board with this because he didn't have to know much going into here. And then him just my dad was like and said, "Oh, so that coach is like dead?" Because it's like, oh well, we need to give Harrison more reason to shoot him. And it's like, no, you kind of don't. You don't like, and it's them saying like not trusting what they have with Harrison or anything. And then even I feel like they could somehow bring Dexter back anyways, even from being shot in the
Yeah.
chest.
Oh
So
yeah.
it
They'll
didn't
bring it back
feel
as a clone. They'll take it from
So
yeah.
Picard.
out of like, I don't know, out of 10 mysterious fire pits, what would you rate this?
I'd give it a letter
Uh,
grade of a C minus, because I still enjoyed the procedure. I love serial killing stories, and and I like the character. I like Michael C. Hall. He's likable enough to override any consistencies in the character. Out of 10, I'd have to give it a 4.5.
because it reminded me of how good this show used to be. I give it a 3, but then because they had to bring back Jennifer Carpenter as Deborah, it goes down to a 1. Because that woman is nails on a fucking chalkboard in anything
Why?
she is in.
It's like
She
Adam Sandler
is
was brought in.
she's a terrible actress. This character of Deb is awful. Like it's a 14-year-old boy as a grown woman. She's terrible. Every fucking part of her is terrible. I'll go off on a fucking tirade for fucking 2 years. So because of Deb, bumps it down to a 1 out of 10. Absolute soulless money grab shit show.
Just ruined it for
What do
you,
you think
huh?
it's like acting opposite though your ex-wife?
I thought it would have been great if he got to like really kill her instead of just softly putting her in the water.
Maybe
so
they're
she goes
friends.
away. I don't know
Yeah,
how
yeah.
anyone.
I'm always fascinated by that. I wonder that with like Scream and Arquette and Cox, but who cares?
I imagine that it gives you a lot of hatred. Like you can feel the hatred in watching It's Always Sunny between Rob McElhenney and
Caitlin
Lee
Olsen.
Bosworth, I believe her name is. Yeah, you can
Caitlin
feel the
Olsen.
hatred between those two when they hate each other. That's fun.
Okay, last what's like your last note on this?
Dexter can go fuck himself.
Because it's not going to commit to something, I'd still love to see a season where, like, because I wonder now, like, yeah, he's dead, but with all the bullshit the show pulls, I can see it coming back. I'd just love to see, why can't we have a Dexter who answers for his crimes one season, and there's a season of him going around messing up, the investigation of his own murder, where he's on trial for real, and it's just a matter of how far he goes away. And then there's a season of him in prison, and he like dies in prison, or he fights in prison, or becomes part of that, or he investigates the code, because the prisons have their own communities and stuff like that. And then what about a season where he
dies
gets out?
because he got into a prison fight, and he's in a cemetery. We're back on cemetery, and he's in the ground.
Well, Suits it's interesting. I always feel Suits probably rescued itself a few seasons, because after they made I'd say, brave decision, even though I didn't care for it much, they figured out a way to do the show with Mike Ross in prison, where they find out that he didn't go to Harvard in a fraud, and he did that. And I feel like that bought the show 3 more seasons, basically. And it wasn't hard.
You guys are totally wrong. Dexter needs more. Dexter kill people. I eat popcorn. Dexter strong good man. Dexter kill bad man. Dexter best.
You think it'll be back? I mean,
I do, because there's enough stupid people that go, Dexter put on table, bad man die, Dexter
did you
kill.
See
I was reading popcorn. Hello, Harrison.
The comments on the finale and everything,
Let's
and they
kill
were
together.
Like, everybody's like, "Oh, please don't kill Dexter! Please don't kill Dexter! I don't want him to go away."
If Dexter
anything.
kills, we riot. Mm-hmm. Remember those stupid fuckers that were saying that about that terrible character Daryl on The Walking Dead? If Daryl dies, we riot. Fuck, that guy can't see through his fucking hair anyway.
If they kill Daryl, then the show is completely dead. They should kill Daryl in the last episode, because this is its final season, which got cut short after all that.
Still going.
So,
all right, well, outro the show.
So, watchingcomplain.com, filmgamer.com, 3 amazing people, and Rob. Go watch those. Go subscribe to them. Go follow us on Twitter. You can follow us at Watch Complain on Twitter, or at FilmGamer1. And tell us what you think about Dexter. Give us your best defense or offense. Let us know. Comment, share.
Shoot you down. Bye, everybody.